skilled, that is educated. And the fact is, in some cases, American immigration has just been very lopsided. Yeah. So, very recently, the U.S. House approved a path for faster green cards for Indian IT workers. But it's not just Indian IT workers. It's actually across-the-board reform, but in a small segment.
These are highly learned. They're mostly, you have to be masters. You know.
Exactly. So that was the distinction I was going to make, is that this is not sweeping immigration reform. This is just for those who are considered highly skilled, highly educated. Basically, today, we've all heard that there are H-1B visa quotas.
Yeah.
And you have to basically make sure that you get into that lottery system or to that cap. Otherwise, you're not going to get a visa.
That's right.
And the reason why the current system is a little unfair is if you're from a smaller country, your quota could be high enough that you never hit it. Yep. Meanwhile, if you're a country like India or China, that number set at today at 140,000 fills up like that.
That's right.
So if you're late or if you don't make it, you might sometimes be waiting as long as 10 years to get your green card, which is just absurd. So what this new legislation does is it actually changes things a little bit. For one, it raises that cap from 140,000 employee-based green cards to 226,000. So they upped the number.
That's right.
But more significantly, what they did was they basically said it's a first come, first serve. So regardless of what country you're from, you're now looking at the same pool of quota to try to get your H-1B, which in some ways favors nations like India and China who have lots of people waiting and takes away those remaining balances that other countries have that they never use.
By the way, most of these masters, the green cards are being given is if you've been educated here in the United States.
Correct.
That you get it real quickly, your green card. That's the good news.
That is the good news. Of course, there are people who will bristle, and in fact, this legislation is being fought actively by people who are part of the immigration community because they say, well, it's great that you took care of the upper echelon. What about everybody else? When are you going to do sweeping immigration reform, which helps everybody?
Folks, you know, debt collection is a very big business. You get as much as 20% to 50% as a commission if you can collect the debt. So the debt organizations have really mushroomed. There are just so many of them.
The business unto itself.
That's right. But one of the things that everybody believes in is when you die, your debt dies with you. But not according to these debt collectors. They want to call the family, particularly the widow, you know, and ask if she can pay this. Whatever you do, it's okay. But, you know, you're not supposed to pay us. But if you think you can pay us, you know, his name will be clear.
Wait a minute. So you're saying this is like a strong-arm tactic. It's a scare tactic.
These are legal tactics because they're approved by the government. For instance, you know, I go spend on a credit card $10,000, buy my wife a very fine jewelry, and then I die. Well, you know, someone needs to pay for that jewelry or someone needs to return that jewelry. I mean, that's a legal part. But it doesn't have to be. The law says your debt dies with you. So it really, she doesn't have to return it.
This becomes a gray area, right? Because I guess what they're saying is she benefited in some fashion, therefore she's somehow liable. But I think it's so gray to define what benefit is and how any party, if it's a gift in this case, right? So how do you distinguish whether that gift being that it was your purchase, but I was a beneficiary, who's really liable for this? I think that's where the legal stance needs to come in and protect these widows who are already devastated by the loss of a loved one.
That's true, but much of this business, folks, is outsourced by these big credit companies.
CD business.
They don't want their footprint on it, so they outsource this, and these are the credit companies. I mean, private companies, they have to make revenue, and this is some of them.
Do they have to be slimy about it?
Yes, some of them have to be, I guess.
Folks, this is a nice story that I read out of biggerindia.com. You know, South Africa has a rich history that includes Indians. And most of us don't think about Indians in South Africa, but in fact, Indians were brought over by the British to build the railroads, just like slaves were brought over to the United
18th
States
century,
in the 18th century. And actually, the Indians that stayed behind in South Africa became a burgeoning community. Not only that, but during South Africa's freedom movement, the Indians participated. In fact, they were liberators, and they were given a lot of credit by the South African government after the fact to say, yes, these people participated, they influenced, and they really contributed to South African society. Well, South Africa is remembering Indians now with postage stamps.
Wow.
To commemorate the 150 years that the Indians have been a part of South African history. 2 stamps were launched Monday by the Department of Communications and the South African Post Office in partnership with the Department of Arts and Culture, and 2 more stamps will come next year. It's a reminder of the extreme hardship and endurance of the Indian laborers that during the British colonial era, when these laborers were recruited to work everywhere, including the sugar plantations. That's really where they spent a lot of their time. And these laborers became liberation fighters, and their immense contribution to building a democratic South Africa is why the post office there decided to commemorate that with a postage stamp. Isn't that cool?
It is very cool.
In fact, last year at about this time, I was in South Africa, and I felt the presence of that strong Indian community. And in the city of Durban, there's actually a statue of Gandhi. Did you know that? Because that was a point in time in Gandhi's life where he was thrown off the train, and that's where he decided he wanted to be that freedom movement fighter also, and that's what began his legacy that came eventually from South Africa to India. So I think there is a very strong tie between those 2 countries, and what a wonderful way to commemorate it.
I think I like that. But here's another picture. Now, in Argentina, the biggest farming king, his name is Simarpal Singh. He is looked at as Maharaja because, they don't know that, but he has done extremely well. He is the biggest farming company in Argentina. They raise about 1.5 trillion tons of rice, and 1 trillion ton of rice they export. I mean, look at him. He's so young. And the article I liked about it is because they say he's very hardworking, he's very charming, he has learned the language, and then he looks like a Maharaja because he wears a turban. Turban to them is like a crown, So it's interesting to see that the Indians are getting all the respect. They are hardworking people, I must say that. And we sincerely appreciate you watching us, and we thank you very much and wish you the best of the weekend. Namaste.
Namaste.